Hi, today I have a question which is asking if a given string has all unique characters. And a constraint here is we are not allowed to use any data structure. So how we can approach this problem? Let me try to explain the problem first. Our job is to find if this string contains any non-unique characters. So if A is here, it can't be repeated again. B can't be repeated, C can't be repeated, D can't be repeated, and E cannot be repeated. That's that's how it's a unique set of characters. But if any of these repeats, then it's non-unique. So how do you find that? By without making use of any data structure. So here, what we will do is we'll take two for loops. We can go through all the characters but last one. So we take A, B, C, D. So these are the ones we need, and we'll leave out E. I'll explain why we're gonna leave out E. So we're gonna access A, B, C, D. So how can we access these? By using for loop. We can use for loop from I equals, this is a string, so a string is 0 index based, so 0 and I is less than, until the length of the string is 1 2 3 4 5. So we're not gonna go until E, we're gonna go until D. So it's gonna be I is gonna be less than the index of E. So that's the string dot length minus 1. So we're gonna iterate A, B, C, D. D is length minus 1. It's less than length minus 1. Less than length is E, but less than length minus 1 is D. And then the increment is 1. So when we use this for loop, we can access A, B, C, D. So what do we do after accessing A, B, C, D? Now A will be compared against all the remaining characters after A. So A will be compared against B, C, D, E. This is also a loop because once we have A, we need to access B, C, D, E. How can we access all of them? So we have to iterate. So for the iteration, we can use for loop again. So how to use for loop here? We can use J equals. Now let's see, when I is 0, that means when you have A, you have to access what? You have to access B, C, D, B, C, D, E. So B comes right after A. So that means when I is 0, J should be one more. So I plus 1. Now until what? So this iteration for loop has to go until E. That means until the end of the string. So what is that? That means J has to move all the way up to the end. How can we relate that with the length of the string? We can do a string dot length and not minus 1. So J is less than string dot length means length is 5, so less than 5 is 4. So we're gonna move up to 4. And then increment would be, it's gonna be J plus plus. Our plan is to move from A to D, and when we're in A, we have to compare A against remaining characters. And when we're in B, we're gonna compare against remaining, so C, D, E, C, D, E. And when we are in C, we have to compare against D and E. And when we are in D, we're going to compare with E. We don't have anything to compare last with. So if we find anything repeated, we're going to catch within these two for loops. Public, static. The reason I'm putting static is I'm going to call this method from a static method, like public static void main in Java. So public static, and the return type is going to be Boolean. And the name of the method is, let me put is unique. And here's going to be argument, or the parameter, and here we'll put the method. What would be the parameter? It's going to be string will be given, string str. Now the first loop, for, we're gonna, let me write again, A, B, C, D, E. So we need to, for the outer loop, we need to start from A and we need to reach up to D. So that's one for loop. And I equals 0, I is less than a string dot length -1. So that's the reason we're doing length -1. Otherwise we could have done length. Even if you do length only, it's gonna work. If you move up to here, that's fine, it's gonna work. And on the second loop, it would not be true, so that would not even execute. But I'm just trying to put here already. We don't even need to do that. And I plus plus. And now, so this for loop is gonna, it will allow us to access A, B, C, D. Now, when we're accessing A, what are we gonna do? We will be comparing those with remaining characters. So that's another loop, because this one, when it's A, we have to compare with this. So we need to have a loop here. A compares with this, again with this. So it's the same thing repeating 4 times, or let's say a certain amount of times. So we need to have a for loop. So for int, let me use j because I can't use I, it's already used. Now here you see, when we have I, there is a for loop. When there is we have I in outer loop, I mean when there is A in outer loop, we can start from B to E. So E is the last element, but B is not the last. B is right after A. So that means it's I plus 1 right after that, right? Right after A. If it's A, right after A. If it's B, right after B is C. And then, so until when you want to run the loop, so let's put that condition here. It's until E, because you're going to compare with even with the last character. So j is less than a string dot length, and I don't want, I'm not going to put -1 because it's going to go all the way up to the end. And then increment would be same thing, 1, because we access B, then C, so its index is going to increase by 1. And now we are accessing, now when we're doing this, when I is 0, let's say when the outer loop is A, now the inner loop is going to be B. So when the outer loop has A, we're going to compare with B, and then C, and then D, and then E. So once it's complete, once this cycle completes, I is going to be 1, that's going to be B. And when there's B, it's going to be B, C, D, E. It's going to have its own loop. So C, D, E. So for each iteration of outer loop, it's going to have 3 iterations inside. So A is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 iterations. B is going to have 3. So that's why we have um, um, nested for loop inside a loop. So here, when we have A and B, now this one, the I is going to give us A, right? And the J is going to give the remaining characters. So we're going to compare. So to compare, what do we use? We use if. If what? If the character we're accessing using this outer loop, that's a string dot character at I is equal to a string dot character at it's a parenthesis j. If that's equal, then we'll return what? It's pretty simple. If A is repeating here, then it's not containing any characters, so return false. Okay, since we have a boolean return type in this method, when this for loop, both for loops end, then at the end, suppose this did not get executed, the return false, this condition is not true. In that case, what we have to do? So that means we compared all characters after all characters against remaining characters, and none of them were repeated. Then what? Then we have to return true, because there is no repetition. So this is the logic. So this is the public static void main. That's why I'm gonna make another static method so that I can call that method from this main method. So let me copy public static void, and no, it's not void, static boolean is unique, and then the parameter is string str. Now the outer loop for int I equals 0, I is less than length minus 1, I plus plus, and then now the inner for loop for int j equals. Now let me explain this once again. Why I'm writing I plus 1? Because the inner for loop, that means when we have A, then we have to compare this A with the remaining characters after A, not with A, after A until the end. So I plus 1 gives B, and then I plus 2 gives C, I plus 3 gives D, and it keeps going until last character, and J is less than, so we have to move until the last character, so it's going to be string length th and J plus plus. And one more time, I'm not doing length minus 1 because length minus 1 goes up to second last, up to here. Okay, I'm not able to show you, but here let me write if I can write A, B, C, D, E. Length minus 1. So less than length minus 1 means D. So what's the length? 5. And the less than 5 is 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the last E. But less than 5 minus 1, or the length minus 1, is D. So here I'm doing string length, that less than length, that means it's going to E. It's going up to E. Here we're just comparing. If a string dot char it, that means character at index I equals character at j. If they are equal, then we'll return true. In case we went through all for loops, all iterations, and we could not find any repetition, in that case we're going to return I'm sorry, here false actually. And if we don't find any false, then we will return true. Okay, now let me call this. Before calling this, let me declare let me create a string str equals abcde, and now let me print the result of this method str. So since A is not repeated, B is not repeated, C is not repeated, D is not repeated, we have to get true. Let's run it. Yep. And then now what if I do a repeat A? We should get false. Okay, what about empty space? I mean nothing. Then we should get true because nothing's repeating. And what about 2 spaces? It should give us false. And what about 2 backslashes? It should give us true. There's a reason. Okay, the reason it's giving us true is this is skipping this one. So in this string, it has only 1 backslash. That's why it's giving true. But if you have 4 backslashes, the first backslash is skipping this one, and the second backslash is skipping this one, so it should give false. Okay, and if you have only 3, it's giving error. Why? Because if the first backslash is skipping the second one, now third one, you can't put backslash in strings like that. So thank you very much, and I'll be showing on the next video how to do this with more efficient way, but it has its own constraint. Thank you very much.